Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the totally hidden foundations behind pretty much every major study, experiment, and survey you have ever read. We are talking about research paradigms. Now, to really wrap your head around what a paradigm actually is, I want you to think of them as, well, like different pairs of glasses that researchers wear to view the world. And depending on exactly which pair of glasses you put on, the entire landscape of reality looks completely different. I mean, it literally changes what you look for, how you look for it, and what you consider to be an actual fact.
But before we throw any technical jargon your way, I want you to just consider a really fundamental question. Is reality objective? Just sitting out there waiting to be measured? Or is reality actually subjective, existing primarily inside our heads and in our shared human experiences? Now, this isn't just some late-night philosophical debate. This is the exact tension that completely divides the academic world and, honestly, determines how we generate all human knowledge.
So just to make sure we're all on the exact same page here, let's quickly define our core term. A research paradigm is the philosophical foundation that guides how research is conducted and interpreted. It really comes down to three big things. First, your assumptions about reality. Second, your assumptions about what actually counts as knowledge. And finally, your methodology, which is just the actual toolkit you're going to use to do your research. Every single researcher, whether we're talking about a quantum physicist or a sociologist, operates under a paradigm.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, Positivism, Measuring Objective Reality.
Let's look at our first and arguably the most traditional scientific lens. For a positivist, the world is highly structured and incredibly logical. Positivism basically operates on the belief that reality is absolutely objective, it's measurable, and it exists completely independently of human perception. Like, if you close your eyes, the universe doesn't change, right? For these researchers, facts are facts. They're absolute. The whole goal here is to establish very clear cause and effect relationships and produce generalizable results that apply everywhere, all the time.
And this brilliantly illustrates our point. Imagine a researcher studying the effect of temperature on the efficiency of a solar panel. Obviously, they aren't asking the solar panel how it feels about the heat. They're running strict, controlled experiments. They rely heavily on quantitative methods. We're talking hard numbers, empirical data, and statistical analysis. The researcher stays entirely objective and keeps any personal interpretation completely out of the equation. And because of this strict setup, their findings can be generalized and perfectly replicated by anyone else in the world using those same tools.
Moving right along to Section 2, Interpretivism, Understanding Subjective Meaning.
But wait, what happens when you aren't studying solar panels? What if you're studying people? Where positivism is all about objective, measurable, and generalizable truths, interpretivism completely flips the script. It argues that truth is highly subjective, it's heavily focused on personal meaning, and it is entirely dependent on context. Under this paradigm, the researcher's goal shifts away from measuring some cold, hard universe to instead deeply understanding human perspectives from the inside out.
You see, interpretivism is based on the idea that reality is socially constructed. Think about something like corporate culture or employee burnout. You can't just put those on a scale and measure their molecular weight in a lab, right? They are built through human experiences, human perceptions, and human interactions. A concept like success or even family really only exists because society creates meaning around it. So in this view, reality isn't a single hard truth. It's a wonderfully messy, complex web.
Because reality and meaning are so subjective in this paradigm, researchers kind of have to put down the thermometers and the statistical software. Instead, they lean on qualitative tools. They're doing in-depth interviews. They're spending months doing on-the-ground field observations, and they write up these incredibly detailed case studies. They really want to capture the rich, complicated stories of human behavior that raw numbers simply cannot show us.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 3, Pragmatism and Critical Theory, the action takers.
Now, pragmatists, they don't care at all about theoretical purity. Their focus is entirely on practical solutions. They're totally flexible, happily mixing both qualitative and quantitative methods depending on whatever the specific research problem demands. For them, usefulness is the ultimate measure of truth. On the flip side of that, you have critical theory, which is actively trying to change the world. Its focus on examining and challenging social structures, inequalities, and power relations. Researchers using this lens typically use qualitative and participatory methods to directly empower marginalized groups. They aren't just sitting back observing reality. They're actively working to bring about real social change.
And that brings us to Section 4, Post-Positivism, a modern update.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it provides a crucial update for the scientifically minded. Strict positivism claims that absolute objectivity is perfectly achievable, but post-positivism serves as this really practical modern compromise. It acknowledges a rather humbling truth. Humans are flawed. Actually, perfect absolute objectivity might literally be impossible. Post-positivists accept that our backgrounds and our specific contexts are always going to subtly influence our observations. However, and this is a huge however, they still fiercely emphasize empirical evidence and the scientific method as the absolute best way to get as close to that objective truth as we possibly can.
Finally, Section 5, Why Your Lens Matters, bringing it all together.
So, the crucial point is this. We have covered a lot of philosophical ground today, going from rigid measurements all the way to entirely subjective meanings. But understanding these paradigms isn't just some boring academic trivia. The pair of glasses you choose has massive, cascading impacts on everything you do. It defines your baseline assumptions about what reality even is. It determines exactly how you are allowed to generate new knowledge. And ultimately, it dictates your choice of methodology, whether you're going to hand out a mathematical survey or sit down for a deeply personal 2-hour interview.
Which kind of leaves us with this final provocative thought. We started out by saying paradigms are like glasses. But if your paradigm dictates your methods, and your methods dictate your results, are you truly discovering an independent truth? Or are you maybe just confirming the prescription of the lens you decided to wear in the first place? It's a pretty fascinating question to keep in mind the next time you're reading any new piece of research. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and hey, keep questioning the lens.